So, how are you feeling with the like upcoming show?
I am feeling good. I think it's like a good practice to produce sort of a new body um, in a short amount of time. I'm excited to have sort of like limitations and like considerations with time and space that I get to then like work with. It's not all there. It's never
Mm-hmm.
always there for me, but I think, um, yeah, I'm excited to be in my studio the next 2 weeks and sort of live in there and see what comes out after the fact.
Well, you've
Uh,
said before about like it being like a lab.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it too is like in the sort of phase, like these like three sort of phases of like testing, uh, production and like experimentation, as well as just yeah, like fumbling around a lot. It's
Mm-hmm.
super important, like playing around.
Yeah.
um yeah, it's like one of those environments that's like vastly it's like being in the studio is like it's like a very love hate relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I talk about it a lot of like going on benders or like partying or having an addiction. It's like, other people are addicted to other things, and um
Being in the studio is that for
yeah,
you?
yeah, it's a bit like that sometimes, which
But
isn't
yeah.
healthy, but it's like a, yeah, it's a different set of engagement or like high or
Well, I've talked about it before in relation to like somewhere between a like an obsession or a dedication, like a compulsion or a dedication. Do you find any like familiarity with those terms in relation to making?
yeah, I mean, I think like in terms of like being compulsive or like within the state of like constant like trance of like making something or
Mm-hmm.
like figuring something out. um I like, I have that like I grew up as like a kid, um like really yeah, wanting to like figure out like tools, parts, machines, objects, how they work. um yeah, I don't know if it's like, it is kind of a tick or a compulsion
Mm-hmm.
or perhaps like, I don't know. I feel like too, I have periods of time where I don't make anything and I feel like quite like I feel like quite ill,
Mm-hmm.
specifically from like various other reasons, but like yeah, it's sort of like the only form of like where I can sort of translate or transcribe things is like through, yeah, being in there and making, or like understanding through making,
Mm-hmm.
sort of this like extemporaneous responsive making.
Like figuring out through that process.
Yeah, figuring out through making is like massively important, I think. Like figure out through doing, and also like error, like
Mm-hmm.
and like challenging error, understanding them and like putting like really like creating like a sort of like like a new language of error, like
Mm-hmm.
understanding through
Like
failure. Pretty
yeah,
much it's failure,
yeah,
right? Like you don't actually like fucking know, what you're gonna make.
yeah,
I mean, I don't work in that way. I
yeah.
don't know what I know.
It's not like a outcome that like you're designing for. You're like mixing things together, seeing what works, how like what like understandings can be produced from that process.
Yeah, I think like synthesis is a good word, or like filtering and condensing things is a good word. I think of it in like a very mechanical process, yet also like a process of like forms that have similar references or visual cues that like may then like have a conversation with each
Mm-hmm.
other, as opposed to like going in there and having a process. I mean, I don't know, like I wasn't really taught like I guess sort of like my practice or like my like art um, education for whatever that means like was yeah, it's more like at this point it's more have like a quote unquote research practice or like a practice where I'm trying to engage with whether it be like material research or um, sort of like conceptual gears to then like practices in like new technologies or and sort of like understanding that through like a really civilian perspective and like sort of being revealed that and from like a yeah through like a personal sort of interaction with my interests or like intrigue with like object material form those sorts of things.
Well, I think like so much of your work is I see as sort of this misusing or of like materials that aren't necessarily like designed for what you're doing.
Yeah.
But like the experimental materials, like obviously the work where you use the same metal that was used by Boeing, and sort of like this contextual misuse and you could argue disrupting or like messing it up a bit. Do you think that relates to like ideas around like slippage that you've sort of discussed before?
Yeah, I think it like also has like a lot to do with like lineage, technology of like um, sort of like whether it be sort of like in the moment technologies or sort of like these breaks or cracks in understanding like the thingness of an object. Yeah, I think it's like really important to understand to like the material and its like inherent form and its implication of the material, where it's coming from, its like past history and its like relevance in sort of like the future of technology in a material world. I am also intrigued or like want to understand things that I don't know. Like I want to see like material that is like reallocated and sort of used in a way that is um, like I don't want to know what I'm always looking at when I look at art. I find like transformation of like material or sort of these like theoretical these like really heavy-handed theoretical analysis of what work is being made is really it doesn't interest me at all. Like I sort of want to know a little bit about the unknown or like what it's like to sort of like unveil sort of like what is like unveiling like the future of like the materials and the myths behind these materials and like the emergent meanings of them.
And like how they're disseminated.
Yeah, and how they're disseminated, but also like I think we don't know enough yet of like the technology that they're bearing, or their like interactions that they have with each other. I think it's like something to be said. Like I think it goes back to like a really fundamental form of like intrigue of having like really innocuous or like ubiquitous materials do something that's very like whether it be lifelike or grand or thrown into like a larger system to give them like agency that's beyond their inherent like agency that they have or like you can see. So like, you know, for example, like I want to like make, you know, hay be able to like dance or like I want to like make like light have a more visible form than it's just it like shining or gleaming or like what does light look like what does like light look like in like poetry or what does light look like all these how sort of like these materials can disseminate into different structures and forms.
your work exists as these sort of crash points. The thing about that in relation to like objecthood and it being like also like the exterior relationship that the world or the viewer exerts onto it is sort of like denied but also engaged with. And
like a refusal.
yeah, there's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
a process of
I think
refusal.
a lot of these are like a lot of the objects they make like people don't like. Yeah, it's like an immediacy of like refusal or like immediately being like I don't know what the fuck that is
Yeah.
really or whatever. Yeah, I mean I think another thing to like talk about in terms of like objectness or thingness. Another thing is like. I think it's like important to talk about like contact and connection points that you have like as a viewer of like engagement, like how people engage with them.
Is that like, are you thinking more formally, materially, conceptually?
I think everything, if I can have it, you know,
Yeah.
and ideally like it's something to like engage with. I don't know. I also like believe in the ability for like the object or thing to then like time travel and like its ability to time travel. I guess that like brings you back to sort of like the slippage or like the cracks if we're talking about like time as like a greater sort of like an extension of where these like sit on.
Yeah. Well, like you've talked before about them almost being like relics in a way, like whether relics from the future or a past. Like, I'm not going to ask for a like grand theory of time.
No,
from
yeah.
you, but how do you see the works as like maybe some kind of consolidation of that in some capacity?
A consolidation of them being a relic or like
Yeah.
a part of the time. I mean, I think it
Like, sorry.
No, go on.
No, like, do you see that as like a reading of like the contemporary, or do you see that more as like sitting within a lineage, or like, if you get my meaning?
I don't know if I like care that much about a lineage. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if my practice like I'm not like engaging that much with like I don't like to be so candid with you like I have a sort of a limit or like a barometer of only looking at art. Like I'm more interested in like a lot of other systems that involve my like excitement or intrigue outside of art, like whether that be industrial farming or like production of materials for defense or like civilian healthcare or yeah I don't like I don't know if it's like a lineage. I'm more interested in like how like why aren't objectness or thingness or artwork and like art the production of cultural consumption like put on the same level as like sort of like these more important sort of like canons of like knowledge or like interests,
Like things that are more systemically impactful.
impactful.
Well, because also you could argue that there's just as much like systems of control and violence and associated with cultural production.
Of course.
Like I think about how much of I mean, art washing, there's been a big conversation more about recently, but I also think about like, I mean, you know, the abstract expressionists being funded by the CIA.
Of course.
You know, I mean, the like
post-war like arts production.
the cultural what has happened in Britain with the British Arts Council, even something as like innocuous as Eurovision, you know.
Yeah.
Countries like Israel being accepted to be a part of it and things like that.
You know, I see it as like sort of my optimistic approach to those two is that like the form of media that like art specifically has is like cultural production is still like so, and I guess this is now turning into a sort of pessimistic perception, but like that art like permits this like lower form of engagement, which I like obviously we don't believe in that shit, but like, you know, it will be the like it's always the first to get cut, but like we're not, you know, producing, you know, A24 film or something. So I think that subversion is actually then like sort of that control, or like if you think of it in terms of like getting hampered by sort of these like whatever fascist regimes that now were like implemented in this like autocratic world that we live in, like I think now it's like it might be more fertile ground to work in because it's it's like less sort of like disseminated within like a very like visual aspect for like, i.e. the government. Like the government doesn't, they don't know that I mean, they know what we're doing, but they don't, it's not projected on like it's not implicated in like a mass form as much as like, and maybe that has to do with like material and thingness is why I'm interested in it, because it's not like film, which is also object or material, but like, does that make any sense?
Do you mean like is it related to like staticness, or is it like related to like medium specificity? Like there's an ephemeral. I mean, there's like we can talk about like the like the raw data and the physical weight of film production and the capital, and also like the
storage space.
The storage space,
like straight up, crazy. Or like the like.
But like that has a very different relationship than like sculptural objects.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like media specific, right? Sculpture, yeah, I mean, I feel like sculptural objects are like, I think they're like perhaps have the potential to be like the biggest conduit form of like analogy, or like subverting and like protesting against like things that are like relevant to our time. Like, I don't know.
Things that are relevant, structures of control.
Yeah, structures of control. Also, like I also do see it as like object making as like as a form of like technology. Like it's just a like it's like, I think making is technology. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that sort of is like then sort of like it sort of loses its excitement when it's produced on like a high scale.
As in like
in terms of the cultural production, whether it be like,
Well, I think so much about like I know I'm thinking about like is it Black Mountain College and things like that, which sort of provide this idea of like art as you're experimenting, you're figuring out like connections between things. And I think a lot of the time art making can be a process of figuring out and understanding and sort of producing those like technological understandings of how relationships get connected. I often feel very much I've just got my red string and I'm going, look at these things.
Doesn't work like that though.
No.
It's not like everyone hopes it's like sort of a pinup board or like like your like Pinterest form, or your like, it doesn't, I don't know if it like always works like that, or like a neural network.
As in like the production of it, or like the outcome of it?
The connections. Like I think the connections are like, what's in the soup is like way more interesting than what is getting connected to.
Yeah. Well, so I guess there's a difference between like using art to give and like there's this idea of like art making that sort of serves this like social purpose of like giving answers to people, as opposed to like seeping into like a gray space of meaning and outside of like a traditional idea of a morality in a sense.
Yeah, the whole like these ways of, like, I don't know if you can like use like putting things into like these like sort of like paradoxes, or like these like sort of this like these like groupings or forms to make. Like I think it's, I don't know like if it's doable to understand the work in that way, like,
as in like medium, or do you mean more like conceptually, or
art doesn't give answers.
Mm.
It asks you to understand the world and your like relevance to the world through it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think like you're supposed to explain, like you're not like art doesn't have like art's not gonna solve, like this isn't gonna solve anything. At the end of the day, this doesn't really that fucking matter that much.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are like larger fucking issues than this does. What this does is like it permits community, it permits engagement and education. And within those realms, I think, and like cultural production, and like within those realms, I think that is like vastly integral to society and its um, ability to change or like emancipate itself from um, structured inherent forms. Like, it's like, you're looking at like mass systems of like government like basically not investing in such critical infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, there's like larger fish to fry, but like if you know how to sort of stay in your lane and like make things that may have like analogy or meaning or allow someone to respond to something better, I think like walking through the world can be a little bit more of like a bearable
Mm-hmm.
place. But maybe that's also a little like woo woo and like optimistic. Um, yeah, I don't. I mean, we all do this because it matters like a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I also am like more my interests like are like what is going on in technology right now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do I like investigate that or like interrogate that or what's going on in like
And
material science
And
or-
like art production is a way of like figuring that out.
Yeah.
Or exploring that.
It's a conduit form.
Yeah. As opposed to like some people would write about it, some people would like do it themselves. You make work to like figure that out.
Yeah.
Because your work
but-
isn't like didactic. You're not trying to like. You're not trying to. Not that it's not didactic, but you're not trying to like. You're not gonna like have a piece of text that explains like everything.
I don't even know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know how to do that.
It
No.
seems more to me like there's a very much an aspect of like an emotive response that sort of provokes your understanding of it, like within the work. Like I think about is it called Feeding Frenzy, the rattling, and then this like instantaneous, like you have this instantaneous connection to it that is like more of an engagement with those technologies, a transposing and understanding of that into a material world.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like, we all need to understand a little bit, like engaging with, we are similarly engaging to these technologies that are designed for, like, not necessarily for us, but for sort of these, like moving us through the world in this larger systematic way. But I also think like disrupting that is more of an interesting space.
Do you have any, like, obviously you're in London now, you used to live in New York, both like massive centres of capital and trade, and also I think especially within the past 20 years, the shifting nature of capital, but then also surveillance. Do you think about like that sort of totalitarian move that has happened has impacted like your thinking in relation to art making?
Shifting between living here and New York City.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't just mean like recently. Do you think both of those, like, obviously they're very different places, but there are like similarities in their space on a like global stage, but also technological surveillance?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk hours for like about CCTV, Chelsea Clinton, X, Y, and Z, like the ways in which we sort of have no sense of what it means to live in like private space at all, or like sacred space for that matter. Um, yeah, I think it's interesting moving from like a hyper capitalist, like a hyper capitalist place to like a more imperial hyper capitalist place, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Like the systems are put in to sort of like understand. Here it's like not only controlling like, you know, it's not only a system of control, but it's also like a system control for this like social or like global world that
Mm-hmm.
you're living in here, which
It's
is a
an
crazy
Yeah,
concept.
it's control for an archaic system,
Yeah,
or
it's
based upon an archaic system.
whereas in like the US, it's the risk is just so much higher.
Mm-hmm.
Like the consequences are like incredibly high. You know, people have guns in the
Mm-hmm.
US, or as opposed to here, like, you know, you sort of like, now that the UK is becoming seemingly, you know, turning into this like privatized
Mm-hmm.
fuck fest, like it's, you know, you're just gonna like have larger amounts of like security, amounts of like basically oppression for like working to like working class to
Mm-hmm.
lower class, and like putting people in these systems of like oppression of like surveillance and working those surveillance jobs. I feel like we talk about that a
Yeah.
lot, like sort of hiring the lower, like, yeah, the working class to work these jobs that they don't even benefit from. They actually are like discriminated within, yeah,
Well, especially
these.
with like platformization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like obviously people. I think it's become at least somewhat more common knowledge about Uber specifically lowering your rate, but if you're more likely to take jobs. So like it will lower the amount of pay you get and the amount of pay you see based on the consistency of jobs because you're a more desperate worker. Um, but there's also some companies in America that have been doing that in relation to nursing specifically.
Yeah, to
So,
the healthcare.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's very likely that in Britain you'll start to see that in relation to like privatized aspects of the NHS.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to turn into a complete private system
Yeah.
here. It no longer, I mean, it will no longer
I mean,
be
they don't own
public.
anything,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think to, uh, you know, you have to, yeah, you have to understand that like it's, it will no longer be like a community society that's like built upon like yeah, community at large anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like like people are suffering.
Yeah.
Like it's there's no joke that it's
Yeah.
a thing.
I kind of want to wrap back to that idea of the contemporary.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the name of the writer. You're definitely the what is the contemporary
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
about the darkness of the age. But like in relation to that, how do you see like, for lack of a better term, like the job of an artist today, or what do you see like as ways that you think people should be making outside of your own practice, or maybe your practice is a consolidation of that thought.
I think it like goes back to like, yeah, in terms of sort of like conceptualizing like what is contemporary or like what is like future. It's always like this thing that like people like gesture towards or like try to think they want to make something about, which I think is really exciting, fertile ground. But I also think it's like what, like unveiling the
Mm-hmm.
future and past to make like a work in terms of like what is contemporary. I will always like go back to this and I will like rest on my laurels and like sort of like fall on my sword and say like, um, yeah, like if you can make like a kid like a child get excited and scream and like furious and mad all at the same time, then you've made a contemporary artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do believe that like it's this is not just for us. Like in forms of engagement and like contemporary engagement, it's like it really needs to be. Um, it really needs to be something that. Um, sorry, I'm blanking right now.
Like something
Sure.
palpable that can be engaged with on multiple levels.
Yeah, intensely. I mean, I also, yeah, we can go back to like another time, go back to like the ability for objects to time travel as well as contemporary. You're always gesturing towards something, but you're wanting to make a contemporary work. It's something that lives and will keep living, but that's a really hard thing to do. It's got to be like relevant within our time. Like what is relevant in our time?